Well, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome into the Buddhist Biohacker podcast and Buddhist Biohacker YouTube. Green Eyed Crow already here in the chat. Hello, hello. Welcome in to everyone who's joining us. I am here today with the wonderful and talented and Shakti-filled Julie Hoyle. Welcome back, Julie.
Thank you. I'm really thrilled. I can't wait to dive into our discussion today. Thank you, Lisa.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited too. And our topic today was birthed out of our last show called Awaken, the Author Within, and talking about writing as a spiritual path. And I think what dropped in the last time we were live together, which wasn't too long ago. I love being back on here with you. It's so fun, nice, and inspiring. Is there's so many people that come to a reading saying, oh, I have this idea to write a book, but then they never do it.
No.
And at this point, how many books have you written, Julie?
Well, my 7th book went live today, so I'm really excited about the whole thing. But, and I do want to say, I never, ever imagined being an author. Never. It just didn't even occur to me at all. It wasn't kind of one of my life goals. And the whole kind of idea just landed spontaneously. And after, having had an awakening. And I think this happens fairly often with people. But like you said, what happens is they receive the message to write the book or create the program or create a piece of music or write a blog or whatever. And, oftentimes they do get started, but then they just stop because they stumble over their own kind of hesitancy or self-doubt or lack of discipline in many ways. And so like you, I've seen that many, many times. And it's kind of heartbreaking, especially when people say, oh, yeah, I wrote a book like 10 years ago and I haven't done anything with it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, too, there's a level of perfectionism. And I was thinking about that this morning when I was thinking about our show today. And I think, that perfectionism comes from a lack of shadow work, I think. Like,
yes.
When we don't look at the tough stuff and accept the tough stuff, I think that's the thing, is like accepting like we're not perfect. It holds us back because I think a lot of people think, oh, if I'm going to write a book, it has to be perfect. And I also think there's that myth of I'm going to write a book and I have to get picked up by a publisher.
Yes.
And I was still kind of caught up in that this past year with my second book, Cherry Pie. And I did get an offer. And in the end, I actually pulled out of it because what I realized in going through just at the very beginning of the process with the publisher was how much they were going to change my own content. And, for me, it wasn't just about writing. Like, I love the design as well. And I put a lot of effort and energy and thought into what I put in my book. The colors, the pictures are all personally my own pictures I took of His Holiness and of my house growing up and things like that. And I didn't want to change all of that. And so I think there's a real call to action for everybody out there who's thinking about writing a book to let go of that perfectionist stuff. Because it doesn't have to be perfect. My first edition was terrible. And my second edition, I'm reading through it now for audiobooks. And I'm like, oh, I want to change this. And this doesn't sound right. I mean, I think have as many editions as you want, right?
Yes, absolutely. So a couple things that coming out of what you just said. One is that perfectionism oftentimes is fear. It's based on fear. It's fear of putting yourself out there. And you keep telling yourself because it's not perfect, but it's really fear of being seen. It's fear of putting yourself out there and not maybe being hugely successful, and telling yourself that you don't want to fail. So it's really, really, really about, fear dressed and masquerading as, it has to be perfect, it has to be perfect. And the thing is that you can keep rewriting and trying to perfect something till the day you die. And there'll always be things that, maybe you feel you would have done differently. And obviously you change as time goes on too, right? But in that moment of writing, in that moment of sharing, then as long as you're speaking from an authentic place, then it conveys the energy, the awakening power, and it has relevance, and it's a kind of a deep way of sharing your authentic voice and your authentic process. So there's all of that, the perfectionist thing. And the second part of that as well is always worrying and forgetting that your call to action comes from source itself. And so that kind of response to that is a form of service. It's a form of getting your wisdom, the wisdom of the self, out into the world. And even if you only manage to kind of sell one copy of a book, it doesn't matter as long as that person, is inspired or motivated by your words. So, one of the things I've talked about as well is I never really gave a rat's ass about failing. I just didn't care.
Yeah.
And I didn't care about making, hundreds or millions or thousands of sales or whatever. The main thing for me was honoring the place from which this response was coming from and following through with it as an act of service. Because if you are really authentic about union with God, wanting to be in your truth, wanting to speak from that place, then it doesn't matter about what the outcome looks like. The most important thing is honoring what you've been called to do. You're called to service. What does that look like? And if it's writing a book or creating a blog, then just do it and don't worry about, what the response will be, or if people will think you're great, or if you don't sell anything. Forget all of that. That's not your business. Your business is to stand behind what you're being told and to follow it and see where it leads you.
Yeah. Well, and the following it is the most important part. I mean, and it starts with, part of our topic today is writing as a spiritual path. And it starts with the journaling piece, I think. And, and that goes for something fictional too. You and I have both wrote memoirs and books that are teaching the teachings that we embody and love and work with. And, I have this old screenplay, and in fact, I have it sitting right here next to me, that I wrote for a high school project. And I remember performing in my living room every single day the lines I wrote in this screenplay. And I mailed it to myself. Hold on, I'll get it because it's pretty crazy. Like, I wrote this in 1996.
Wow.
I mailed it to myself. Let's see, I mailed this to myself in 1995. There's the post stamp right there. 1995 to copyright it.
Wow.
I know. What was I thinking? I don't even know. But this is me. All of these pages I typed out. I learned how to write a screenplay. I did all this for the school project. Anyway, all that to say, the whole thing takes place in 1100 AD. And I've decided to turn this into a fiction novel. I've never written fiction, but I think this is all past life related. And so I'm sharing this because whether you're writing about this life or another one, there's an exploration of yourself and your creativity. And I think whether you're writing a book or a bio or a blog article or a story or a poem, I think it's an exploration of the self.
Yes.
And I think you're missing that exploration if you're afraid of doing it, and I'm like you, I've not really cared if I sold a book or anything. I don't take it personally, because I feel like, whatever we create, it's about what we're putting out into the ethers. And the people that are meant to find it will find it, whether it's now or 200 years from now. I mean, it really doesn't matter. But I just want to, say it's all about exploring yourself.
Yes. Yeah. And also just trusting your own inner guidance and listening to it. Because if you're receiving a prompt to write a book or create a piece of music or art or whatever it is, then when you respond and you follow where that's leading you or pointing you to, You learn, like you said, you learn so much about yourself. You learn so much about your resistances. You learn so much about your conditioning. You learn so much about the things that inhibit you and inhibit your voice and the fear around what that looks like. That, you know, those things are absolutely priceless. And it's God giving you, or Source giving you, your own kind of private teaching around what all of that looks like. And it's far better to do that yourself and go into your own kind of process of self-discovery than signing up for somebody's course online. You know, I mean, and I'm not saying those things aren't helpful. They very much are. And if you're inspired to do that, do it. But at the same time, you know, your own inner guidance, your own prompts have value. So don't just start and then just kind of drop it. And oftentimes people drop these projects when they hit a little snag, or there's difficulty with something, some part of it, or they don't know, for example, who to turn to get the cover of the book designed, or how to do the editing or whatever. They just kind of give up on it. And it's such a shame when that happens.
Yeah, I agree. And I apologize, everybody. There's singing behind me. It's Sunday morning. There's always singing here. So I'm muting myself while you're talking. But anyways, yeah, I agree. And I think, you know, sometimes the picking it up and like dropping it and then coming back to it. Like, I know that's for me what happened with Enlightenment Pie and Cherry Pie. It was a lot of like, you know, we have these moments where we're super connected, right? And it's not us. We were talking about that before the live, right? It's not really us writing. And so I have these moments all throughout my life, and especially during the journey, my healing journey, which is what my two books are primarily about. And I'd have these moments where I was deep in some kind of cleanse, or coming out of something difficult or heartbroken or whatever it was. And I would feel so profoundly connected to spirit, especially when I was in nature. Several of the things I wrote in the stupa of Dharmakaya up in Red Feather Lakes in Colorado, which is like a Buddhist temple. But these things would drop in, these like thoughts or these poems or these ideas. And it would take me years in some cases to actually explore those ideas and write about them and integrate them and understand them, because I think these big concepts drop in from
Yes,
the ethers, the
yes,
spirits, whatever, and then you have to figure out what it really means. And I think it's so important to journal. Like, I can't say enough about journal. I've always journaled, so it wasn't something I had to learn for me. But get a notebook and journal. Like,
yes,
just do it.
yes, yes. You know, and just trust the creative prompts. You know, and I'm going to share an anecdote because I think this is very relevant to what we're speaking to here. When you first sent out the email to invite speakers onto the One Heart, One Earth symposium retreat that's coming up, in 2 weeks now, right? I think, is it 2 weeks? 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from Thursday, so 2.5.
Yeah, so I can't remember when you first sent the email out, but it was several weeks, a couple of months ago, maybe 2 or 3 months ago. And as soon as I read it, everything in me just said yes. And then I kind of went, you know, what happens is I come out of the mind and then kind of go into this space. And then, you know, with the question, what do I speak about? And the answer came immediately. And it was reclaiming your energy, looking at what that means, looking at where you've been kind of disenfranchised, where you've been separated away, and all of those things. So you know, I sent that kind of little blurb to Sienna and to you, and then I was like, oh wow, this feels, you know, really great, because, you know, this is going to be an interesting conversation and be great and fun to look at. And then, of course, all these other things started to drop in, which was to refocus and look back at. I'd had an idea about writing a book titled Shadow and Spark, Reclaiming Your Creative Fire. Was it? Yeah, Reclaiming Your Creative Fire. And or revisiting your creative fire. I forget the subtitle. But anyway, looking at that and getting that back on track and just adding, time and energy to it. And the thing is I'd kind of put that on the shelf for a while because I somehow knew it wasn't the time to release it. And then with your invitation, then it became clear that it was time to revisit, get behind it, and get it out there. And as synchronicity would have it, I didn't sit down and plan it and time it. I just finished it, got the formatter to format it for me because I'm not interested in formatting an ebook. And then lo and behold, it was available for purchase today. It's been on pre-order, but it was available for purchase today, which is the day we're now talking about Awakening the Author, writing as a spiritual path. So, the mind could never, from the intellectual kind of perspective, you could never sit down and factor all those things and organize all of those things, right? It's all synchronicity. It's all the flow of grace. It's all source itself. But the thing is if I hadn't responded to your initial invitation to be a speaker, in this OHO, then none of the other things would have happened. It would have all just been shelved. And I think part of the reason people suffer so much from depression, feeling listless, like don't know what their purpose is about, all of those things, is because they dismiss the initial spark that is kind of directing them towards bigger things. Because it's a progressive kind of opening, I think that is the way I would describe it. And I know you probably say the same thing. It's like you start with something and then it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's not that you're coming from this place of trying to become known in the world, or, I want to be on Oprah, or I want to become a famous author or anything. It's all about serving the light of that prompt, that spark, that initial kind of, invitation, and then following it and seeing what the next step is and seeing what the next call to action is and just going with it.
Agreed. And I love this. Rick is so fabulous. And he is sharing journaling has been the key for me to get used to simply putting words on paper. I recently began replacing my journaling with writing my personal story, and I'm just so excited about that. Rick has a great story, so thank you for sharing, Rick. Really appreciate it. And, I see a lot of you watching live and would love to hear, what are your challenges with journaling and writing? What are you working on? What do you want to do? Because it doesn't come naturally for everyone. It definitely can be a process. And I would say if you're drawn to this podcast and you're drawn to this kind of work, it probably is natural for you.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I was doing stuff. I have so many things I wrote even as a kid. I don't know, it's been part of me my whole life. I've always written things, and actually got called into the principal's office once in, it was junior high, because I wrote something that was adult content, and they were like, "Where'd you get this from?" And I remember getting in trouble. They were like, "Where'd you take this from?" And I'm like, "I didn't take it from anywhere. And at the time I couldn't say I channeled it. I didn't know what that meant, but that is what happened. And, so at the time I'm like, I don't know. I just wrote this down. This is what I wrote. And I'll never forget being in trouble for my writing because they thought I had plagiarized it or stolen it from something. And it was just something that Spirit had to say. And I think, especially being in nature, there's nothing more amazing than sitting in nature and writing, and don't let the logistical process hold you back. I think we have AI, we have Canva, we have so many technological tools to support you in designing and creating and editing and all of those things. And, I have some colleagues in the past who spent thousands and thousands of dollars on writing a book, and their book was no more anything, and honestly less personal. So I think what makes your writing special, I know there's a lot of concerns about AI, but the thing is, what makes your writing special is it's your own story.
Yes.
It's you, and it's what you feel and what you are channeling and what you are pulling in from the ethers to share with the world. And I really didn't understand what Enlightenment Pie was when I started writing it. It really took rewriting it to actually get clear about the process and what I was sharing. And to be honest, I'm recording right now for audio and video of my book Cherry Pie. Actually have it sitting right here. Here it is.
Nice.
And my God, the shadow work coming. I mean, I don't care how many times I read this book of my own doing. It's like, oh, it's funny, Julie, in this book, there's, I have in the book, and I know you have so many activities in your book too. I have these patterns of codependency and these patterns of recovery. And what's amazing to me is in reading this now, like I think about what patterns I was really stuck in and how like sticky and icky they felt. And when I read them now, it's like, oh, no big deal. And there's other stuff that I'm reading now that I'm like, oh, this is what I need. I need to work on this. Like this is sticky, icky. And so don't let all that like stop you. Because I think I look at writing as a way to transform myself over and over and over again. And there's beautiful channeled writings, but there's also like just the yucky journaling where I journaled about boys for like 7 years. And it's like, look at this obsession, crazy shit coming out of me. Like, pardon my language, but it's like, what is that? But it forces you to kind of look at that and to deal with it. So I don't want that to stop anybody. And I'll put it back out to the group and then I'll kick it back over to you, Julie. But like, share in the comments. I want to know where you need help and support, because Julie and I are here to help you. We both have published enough material now between blogs and books and content and videos to be able to help support you too, so you can get started. Like even if you're just stuck on getting started,
yes,
we're here to help you with that as well.
Yes, yeah, because look, as a kind of another reference point, yesterday I was on Threads, and I really actually like Threads. It's a sister of Instagram. But there was a writer there that was saying, oh my gosh, I spend days and days and days formatting my, manuscript into an ebook. And oh my God, it's doing my head in, and it's just so challenging, and this and that, the other. And I was like, why would you even do that to yourself? I mean, seriously. She said she's a one-woman show, as you and I are as well. But you can get somebody to format the ebook for you for honestly between $30 and maybe $50. And to me, that I'd rather spend $50 and have somebody do that for me than me sit for days and days and days trying to figure it all out. Because you have to know all the coding, HTML, and all of this, getting all the formatting right across all the devices. I just honestly have no interest in that. I much prefer to outsource that, and I've found a fantastic woman who does it for me. A very rapid turnaround, and it doesn't cost anything hardly. So as you said before, there are resources and there is help available. You just have to kind of. And if you don't know where to go, just ask, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you have your people. I have my people as well. And it just takes that schlep out of it. Because for me, I just don't enjoy that. I will never enjoy that. And I'm not interested in learning how to do it. So I'd rather pay somebody,
Oh, absolutely. And Raquel shares, hi, Julie and Lisa. Hi, Raquel. We love you so much. I think for me, when I was writing my story, I couldn't get past the feeling that the mind ego would take over. Every time I would sit to write my story, it stopped flowing. And she also shares, I chalked it up to not being the right time. And then when I had my blog, readers dropped off and it started to feel draining.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes. So it is often time. It's the right time or not. And also, if you've got lots of pressure at work and your time is limited, that can be difficult too. But for me, writing's kind of like meditation. I drop into that space. And of course, you don't have to be sitting at a desk doing it either. You can be kind of walking in nature and opening up and opening yourself up to receive. You could even kind of do a voice recording. with ideas and just go from there and turn it into play and into fun. I mean, one of the, again, I shared this morning on Threads, one of the most amazing things that happened to me years ago when I published my first book, An Awakened Life, A Journey of Transformation. I was really excited. I was also, honestly, scared shitless, if I can say that, because of putting myself out there. You know, I just had never revealed these kind of very personal processes and the, you know, the inner workings and the Shakti and the awakening and all of those things. But, you know, I just put the book out there. I was visiting friends in California, and they were talking about my book. And the husband of my friend said, well, you know, you probably won't make a whole lot of money from your book because, you know, books nowadays are more like calling cards. And my friend she kind of looked horrified at what he'd said, but there was something in what he said that landed so deeply in me. And I felt he's absolutely right. And I was excited. I wasn't disappointed by his words. I was excited. It didn't feel like he was minimizing my efforts. In fact, it just really rang true. And I thought to myself, it's the absolute truth for me. It might not be for somebody else, but for me, it was about sharing my you know, process of awakening, and also having that available for other people who are going through it. And I didn't care whether it was a huge success or not. It was really about just following this call to action, you know, seeing what happens. And, you know, I think there's truth in that. If it is kind of like a calling card, people get to know your voice. And especially if you're offering other services, like you're offering, you know, yoga classes, Ayurvedic consultations, and all of those things, it gives people a place to go to get to know you before they decide whether or not they want to work with you. So there's great value in that. And for me, it was never about becoming famous. So I think if you have that goal, it can be very limiting. It can be really stifling because you've got to feel like you've got to get it right. It's got to be amazing. It's got to get onto the New York bestsellers list and all of those things. But if you do it as an act of service and from a place of love, it's a very, very, very different process. And I think these are the people that you and I speak to and work with and support, as opposed to people that, you know, are oriented towards this kind of goal of becoming very well known.
Well, yeah, I totally agree. And I think going to what Raquel said about, you know, worried that the mind and the ego would take over. I think for my books, that is what I wrote about. I mean, I think don't be afraid to go into that. Don't be afraid to go into what your ego has to say, because my ego had a lot of things to say, and it pointed to the work I needed to do on myself and did do on myself and still do on myself. And that's exactly what I'm sharing in my book. So I think that's where I think the overthinking, it just gets us so tangled up in all sorts of things. Like you're saying, like the act of writing is the act, and we're like, let go of don't worry about what you're writing about. And the other thing I'll say, and this is a piece of advice, is don't sit down to write a book.
Yes, no.
Don't do it, because it's impossible. It's impossible. I have so many things I started that I never ever finished that were just ideas, because I was sitting down to write that idea. And a great example is I have a book about channeling, and I started that book, and I have, like, I don't know, 20 pages of things, like all these jumbled up kind of thoughts and ideas I wrote. And it wasn't until now, it's 20 years later, that now I'm going to write that book, because now I understand what I was trying to write. And so sitting down to write something start to finish, it's more about going through the exploratory journey of yourself and your spirituality that gives you the space and the permission to go back and write about what your journey is about. Vishali shares, I love all these comments, by the way. Vishali, we love Vishali too. I started my book in 2020, put it down for 4 years. Yes, it took years of integration before I got to publish the book. Funny for me, I don't like journaling, but I do write mostly articles and blogs. And she said working on Audible now there. Yeah.
Yes.
The audio is even more intense, I feel, because I wanted it to be my own voice. But I was recording this last week, and I started crying when I read the part about my dog Max passing away. And I was like, I'm just going to leave it in there, because at the end of the day, like it's emotion that happened when I was reading it, and I'm just going to let it be there. But that's the audio is just as reading it out loud is like really intense. I don't know how you feel, and listening to it out loud isn't.
Yes, yes, for sure. Because there are huge swathes of that, excuse me, that I don't even remember writing. It's like, because, I'm not sitting there like from this there are people that plan it and plot it all out.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's terms for it, a planster or plotter or something. I forget. Pantser. Somebody who just goes with the flow, or somebody who plots things out. I never do that. I just intuitively, I just always just write that way. But when you hear it as an audio, it has a whole different energy and different quality, and it's really amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear, because it's the teachers are speaking, not you. And when you listen to it, you're like, whoa. And especially, I know for me, listening to the Dalai Lama chapters in my book, like what His Holiness had to say, because most of his teachings, the public teachings, were recorded. So I could go back and watch them on YouTube, which is kind of a gift, or it is a gift. But to listen to those words again and think about what I was going through at the time, and it's just amazing.
Yes. But I'd be really interested, since we've got some authors and would-be authors here. I'd be interested in hearing, what were the biggest challenges in terms of getting the book out there. For me, it was really around the whole formatting thing. So it was such an amazing, breakthrough when I was able to find somebody that was reliable and somebody who did the work correctly. And the other challenge, which I've spoken about before, was connecting with an editor that just made a hot mess of everything. And I missed the deadline, and then the book came back, and it was full of mistakes, and I had to start again. So that was a big learning curve. And really what I was doing was this is a fairly new editor, and I was giving that person an opportunity to be able to kind of have a portfolio, and I was going to recommend them and all of those things. And I really couldn't after that. It was a disaster. But those were the main challenges for me. And having to get up sometimes 3 or 4 in the morning so I could write ahead of going to work, and then coming back and revisiting it. And then when I was going through the audio process, there was some, mix-ups, and then I had to contact Amazon and get all of that sorted out. But, those were just kind of technical issues rather than the sort of creative process parts for me.
Yeah, my biggest challenges were connecting the dots. I think that was what was challenging for me. And I think my impatience, because I had written all of this material, but I didn't know what to do with it. And I also wrote in my journals, and I understood what I was struggling with, but I wasn't through it yet. And so I think when you're writing a memoir, especially, like that was the challenge for me, was like, what am I really doing here? Mm-hmm. And it was funny because my 4-step process, Julie, like that came like in the middle of waiting to find out even if I like what was wrong with me. So that was before I even knew I had parasites. And I just like downloaded that 4-step process. But then it's like, well, what does that even mean? And the first edition of Enlightenment Pie, I didn't even write about trust, which is the 4th step. I just didn't write about it. And I knew that was something. And when I revised it, I started to understand, like, oh, this is what trust really is. And I think that's still a step I'm working on now. And so I think that's a challenge too, is like when you're writing about your own process or your own, it really wasn't my process. It was the teacher's process that they gave me. And then it's like, well, how do I work with this process? So that was challenging for me, and editing was challenging. because my husband so kindly said to me that it sounded like a teenager writing in her diary, my first edition. And so when I was working on the second edition, I was grateful to find some editing help to really support, to change the voice of the book to match more of who I am today and not who I was during that time. So that was challenging as well. So I'm with you if you folks want to share your biggest challenges here in the comments. And I love that we have so many authors in here. It's awesome.
Yes, yes. The other thing that can happen, is that you become word blind. When you're reading your own writing, there's a way of speaking that we all have, right, that can be repetitive. So you can end up being, very repetitive. And then seeing words that can be spelled wrong, you've missed a letter out or something like that. And you can become blind to it because you're kind of reading it. And it doesn't, it's weirdly, I found that I've got a new MacBook Pro, and it doesn't, when I go into spelling and grammar, checking, reviewing and so on, it doesn't always show up some of the errors. It's kind of a weird thing. I don't know quite know why, but yeah, you really have to review and review and review and get a second or third or fourth pair of eyes, and or find somebody that you can trust who does really good, editing work. But, all of those things coming together really do help you tighten up the way your writing is shared, and gives you a much better response.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about the Shakti of the writing too, because I think words have a meaning. And so when you're writing spiritual teachings, one thing I noticed, my autocorrect just loves to autocorrect self with a capital S.
Yes.
Else. And so I don't know if you found this, but going through, it's like, well, wait, the teaching was specifically this. This is what I wrote in my journal. And so trying to, hold that sacred while also editing, I found that's a challenge too, because the automated editing it doesn't understand what you're trying to say at all.
No. Yeah. And it can really kind of garble everything up if you're not careful. And, it'll flag everything. And then, so what do you do? Do you turn it into language? And I've had this conversation with Tony, my husband, because he says, who are the people that you're writing for? Do they understand the term, for example, Shakti? Or do they know what you're speaking about when you're speaking about energy? And so he's been very good from that perspective, and also from the male perspective, to kind of help me. But I've really tried to be authentic in terms of what I'm hearing and what I'm writing. But like you said, it can be quite a tightrope to walk, because again, you have to think about the people that are reading it, or people who might be interested, and is it accessible for everybody? And if it isn't, how can you make it accessible without losing that kind of the richness and the quality of sacredness in which it was given? So it can be difficult.
Yeah. Well, and I think even when you're journaling, if you are in that place where you're really channeling or pulling in sacred information, is, thinking about what the true meaning is behind what you're writing as well. I think that's something that's worth reflecting on, the contemplation of, I have some things I've written where it's like, I'm still not quite sure what they were trying to tell me. And that's part of the journey too, of writing spiritually and looking at what you're getting information wise.
Yes, because some of the things, I've been keeping a journal for decades. I've got so many of them, and I'll look back at some of them that I was writing in the 80s and early 90s, and I just was like, and I'm asking a question, and then I get the kind of the stream of consciousness response. And when I read it now, I was like, holy macaroni, this is just incredible. Because obviously I didn't know what was coming next, but the content was speaking to what was going to come. And sometimes it doesn't come out for like 10 or 15 or 20 years, but it's all right there. And and as you said, you don't always understand what you're being given. in terms of the languaging of it, because it's sometimes hard to put it into language. But there's the energy of that is still alive and fresh. It's, as the yogis say, it's Chaitanya. It's alive with the Shakti of the awakening power. So, so it's really important to keep that, to try and sort of keep that in terms of what you're given and how to convey it in the most authentic way.
Yeah, agreed. I saw a really cool, I think it was Joyce Vanderlely, who's been on the show before, but she's taking her old journals and she's actually painting and drawing over the pages what she feels about whatever she's journaled about. And I have not done that yet, but it's in my mind because I've thought about like, well, what do I do with these journals? Because some of my journals, like when I was, younger, I burned, and I wish I wouldn't have done that. And so like you, I have, decades of journals kind of sitting on a shelf. And I like that idea of transforming them into art or doing something with them that takes it to another space now that I've written the books about that time, because I feel like, okay, that's kind of complete for me. And now what do I do with this collection of things that I had there? So I'm not quite sure what to do with it, but I'd be curious how many of you all out there in the audience save your journals, and how many of you have any unique journaling practices, anything that you do that makes the journaling more interesting. I know Katie Weinberger, who's also an author, she does a lot of drawing in her journals as well. And I have this weird habit since I was a kid that I will draw flowers when I'm thinking, and then I start to write. And I'm sure it's some kind of channeling thing, but I've always drawn these little flowers on. So like my journals have all these like little flowers in these random corners of the pages and things. What do you do, Julie? What's your journaling style?
Yeah, I do the same thing. I always sit there and I've always sat and doodled, and especially when I used to have to sit through boring meetings, I'd be doodling. And getting flowers with these long vines and all these leaves, and the whole thing. But I usually I used to draw first to get into that flow, and now I just go straight in. I'll usually draw the Om sign, and then I'll just start. There's a question or there's an inquiry that's kind of apparent, and then I'll just focus on that and then start and go from there. And it usually goes off into something else. But to be honest, I've been doing less journaling now. Since I started writing, actually, I've been doing a lot less journaling. I just go straight into writing and putting content out there, and very, very rough, crappy first draft. and and then just see where it takes me. And then I'll usually just switch things around, and then I'll leave it alone. And then I go for a walk or go for a swim or whatever. And then this kind of prompt will land. Add another chapter here, or shift chapter 5 up to chapter 2, and reconfigure things. And I just receive the guidance as a sort of download, and then I'll go back in and start editing and readjusting things. Yeah. So, and of course, I think the more you do that, the more you write, the easier it becomes. And, whether you're writing by hand in a journal to begin with, or going straight onto a device, or speaking it doesn't matter. The main thing is whatever feels most authentic and organic for you is what's key.
Well, and sticking to what too, like I think like you, I don't journal as much. And there's something interesting, we're not really talking about shadow work, but we really are, because writing is shadow work. And I think there's something interesting, like the more you kind of build your shadow work muscles, the less you need to write about it. Like before, I would journal all sorts of things, trying to work out like what is going on. And now it's more like you have a mirror and you're like, ooh, and then you can kind of think about it, and you may not even have to journal anything. Or sometimes I'll write in my planner like a statement of something that's come to me through it. So I think it's interesting, like the more work you do on it, the less you actually have to do all of the journaling, and it's more about writing. I think stick to what you know. Like I have had these ideas my whole life. Even Medavia, my script, is one of them. I've had these like set of ideas that I've written about, that I have like all sorts of things. When I went to Naropa University, I took a creative writing class, which was like an amazing class. And I have my portfolio from that class. And even that has stuff that goes with these things. And so there's things I know, like I've read tarot cards for 30 years, 31 years. Holy cow. I know tarot cards. So writing about tarot cards is something I can do and something I'm working on. And so I just want to offer that too. Like, we know our story. Like when you're writing, like going back to what Rick said, he's changed from journaling to writing his personal story. Like, there's so much power in writing what you know, whether it's a topic or it's something that's in your own life. But that's where the true power comes from, I think, is your own story. I think if you're trying to recreate someone else's story or somebody else's body of work or some of their teaching, it doesn't work.
No, it really doesn't. And with the latest book I've written, Shadow and Spark, I've spent 30 some years teaching both teens and adults to connect in with their own intuitive knowing, through the creative process, and just seeing day in, day out what all the obstacles look like, having conversations, creating supportive, states and places for young people and for adults to kind of move through their own self-doubt and, self-judgment and all of those things. So for me, it's just so effortless. It's so easy. And I kind of know what the obstacles are especially, when I have somebody that I'm working with who's trying to write a book or a blog or whatever, or create a piece of artwork or whatever. I already know what's going to come up. I really do, because I've seen it so many times. So, whatever place you're speaking from, as long as it's authentic and it's lived, it has to be a lived experience. It really is kind of effortless, actually. So, whether you're working, in a bank or in an office or, whatever your day job looks like, you can draw from that in the most authentic way and keep it real, because people, especially today, are looking for content that is authentic. Everybody's getting tired of being kind of lied to, or having masks, or having things that aren't real. Yeah. So the key, I think the highest form of currency today is authenticity and integrity and truth. And that's what people long for. And, you can only tell your truth from your own place of direct experience and from your own lived experience. You cannot sort of, as you said, duplicate someone else's story. It just doesn't work. And, we can all kind of smell the aroma of anything that isn't real. You can kind of smell bullshit a mile away.
Oh, yeah. Well, and there's value to your personal story. I think it's really important to understand that your story has value. Mm-hmm. And I think it's easy. Again, it really does go back to the shadow work. Like if you're struggling with your own value, if you're struggling with perfectionism, if all these things that could be holding you back from creating goes back to working on your own shadow and learning how to love and accept yourself. Because when you love and accept yourself, you start to see the value, and you see yourself and understand that you are also God's source itself. And that's where the trust comes in, right? Like that's where it comes in. When I share my story, I know that I went through my journey to learn something, and I want to share what I learned because I trust that it's part of what, God wants to create. And I think that's what keeps me saying yes and keeps me taking action and keeps me doing these things. Like, for some of you listening who are, it wasn't like it was so easy for us to publish books. And at the same hand, it was, because we just did it. Like, and that's the prompt for everyone today is like, just go do it.
Yes.
Don't worry about what your personal story looks like when you write it. Just write it, because you'll come out. There comes a place where you realize what you're actually writing. Mm-hmm. If you sit down trying to write something start to finish, it's never going to work. But if you just write to write and you're sharing your story, as you read back through it and you go over it, it really starts to become clear, I think.
Yes.
Raquel shares here, she also doesn't journal as much. What happens now is I will be out in nature. Things come to me. I will type them out in the notes section on my phone. I have a ton of note entries. Oh my gosh, me too, Raquel. The value issue and perfectionism. Yes. And it has this new thing where we can show comments on stage, but I don't know how that works. So I'm going to turn it on and we'll see if it shows up over here. I don't really know how this all works, but I'll leave this up and we'll see what happens so you guys can see the comments. But anyway, yeah.
Yes. The other part of all of this as well is conditioning. We don't often realize how kind of profoundly we've been conditioned by our own environment, by our family structure, our family's beliefs, and all of those things. I mean, I'm the only person in my family that's ever written a book or done anything that in the kind of public domain like this. So if like me, you're coming out of that kind of orientation, it can be really challenging. And I think you and I, we had a conversation, maybe a private conversation, about what somebody had posted on Threads a few weeks ago, where she said she'd published a book, and her husband said to her, "Oh, don't tell anybody in case it's bad, or in case it's, don't tell family members. It might be a flop," or however he put it. But there can be all those kinds of thought patterns and belief structures that are in place that you're not even kind of consciously aware of, based on your upbringing. I mean, obviously, if you're coming from a family of published authors, it's a whole different thing. But if you're the first person in your family, then there can be these kind of subtle messages in the back of your mind telling you, who do you think you are? You know what I mean? So again, this is all shadow work. This is really having the courage to look at these kind of old voices that you've inherited that really have no meaning for you and your life, and just having the courage to kind of meet and greet what's there and integrate it, and not let it dictate to you what you can and can't do.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to innovate. I mean, I think their technology is there, and there's a lot of fear and negativity around it. And I think just use it. Just like you're saying, Raquel, you use the notes section. I do that too, because I actually use my notes on my phone now for my dreams. And not only that, but I don't even type. I'll get up, I'll be laying in bed and I'll get on my audio and audio record the dream into my notes so that I can look at it later and look at the meanings of it or whatever, because I might go back to sleep or I might move on to something else. So there's audio recordings, there's ways to transcribe those without you having to actually do anything. There's editing that you can use that's all technological. There's lots of design options out there. Julie and I did not pay thousands of dollars to publish our books at all. And I know people who have spent $10, $20, $30, $40,
Yes.
$50,000 to
Yes.
publish a book and have it marketed. Don't waste your money.
No.
Don't do it. We, very minimal,
Yes.
Created it, wrote it, got it out as quickly as possible, which goes back to the fear piece too. It wasn't about holding back and waiting for some kind of bestseller. It was just get it out and get that behind you. And going back to what you said about the calling card, Julie, people look for that when you're a teacher.
Yes.
And a counselor, or any kind of public speaker, having that body of work behind you is really important. Just like you said, Julie, for folks to understand who you are, but also for me, it gave me clarity of what am I really doing? Because I do a lot of different things. So it's how does this all come together? Well, it all comes together in my books. And now I can speak to that when I'm speaking to anybody about what I do. It's I have a 4-step process, and I integrate all of these things together to heal, right? And it's about healing yourself. I'm not going to heal you.
Yes.
I'm not healing you, but I can help you while you heal yourself, So I just, don't be afraid to use technology. Don't be afraid to put your story out there. Don't let these little tapes playing in your head stop you from putting out something that might be vastly important to the world.
Yes, absolutely. And also help to uplift the world, because let's face it, the world is in a hot mess right now.
Oh boy.
So anyone that can shine light and offer support and positivity and motivation to others, it's such a treasure, and it's so important. And I'm sure that's why, you and I and other people who are on here today have been prompted to write their books and to tell their stories, because we need more positivity, we need more light. And if you close that down, if you keep telling yourself you can't do it, or who'll buy it, or who'll listen, or whatever, then you're not really kind of uplifting humanity at all. You're just kind of hiding.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I keep going back to that good old life review. Like, when we cross onto the other side, I would rather try and be able to say to my spirit team, like, look, I listened to you, I tried, and I'm learning, because that's what we're here to do. And I think that's the thing, Julie, that you and I both embody with all the creative work is, we're given this life experience to learn. Mm-hmm. And you can't learn if you just freeze up and hold yourself back. And when we don't practice journaling and self-inquiry and this idea of looking at our shadow, when we don't practice that, we do freeze out of the trauma of the planet that we're in. I mean, there's challenging things that happened yesterday, right? Like there's all this stuff, and it can hold you back because, well, what if? And the big what if that we miss in Western culture is, what if I die and I don't accomplish anything that I was thinking about at the time?
Yes.
And that's the what if that drives me to keep saying yes and to keep doing things, rather than what if I mess up. I think, what if I die tomorrow and I didn't finish this project? Like,
yes.
That is literally how I feel every day.
Yes, me too. I mean, just this morning, I was at my puja, my altar space, and I was saying to the great beings whose photos I have, guys, I'm trying. Every day I'm like, I'm trying. Even when I'm exhausted, I'm trying. No matter what, I just try. And when I get an intuitive kind of prompt to do something, I just always say yes. Even if I feel absolutely exhausted and I've got no energy for anything, I just say yes, and I just get on with it and do it. And I'd much rather that than the outcome of not responding, which is depression, because these prompts that we get are a form of source itself, speaking to source itself. And if we deny that and repress that, then in me, anyway, it manifests as a kind of depressed, feeling flat and kind of diminished and whatever kind of energy. And for me, it's no way to live. I just want to, on my deathbed, like you said, I want to say, listen, I tried. I did my best.
Yes. Like me too. I'm going to finish this stuff. Like, I don't care how long it takes me. And we just don't know how long we have. And I think that's something to remember within yourself, is you are valuable. Your story is valuable. What you're writing has value. And don't let the voices in your head hold you back. And Raquel shares, I love this topic. This is helping me so much. I'm so happy to hear that, Raquel. She says, I am in school to become a counselor. And so now it feels more important than ever to shine my light and share my story. Yes. And for everybody watching, if you have not registered for OHO, please do so. It's One Heart, One Earth Global Healing Summit. It's July 10th through the 13th. We have about 30 presentations between panel discussions, workshops, and speakers. And the topic this time around is Awakening the Sacred Body. This is the 6th summit we've done. I was going through the OHO content, and Sienna and I were laughing because we found the Sustainability Summit, and I had forgotten I even did that summit. You remember that?
Yes.
I just totally forgot about it because we did so many
So many.
summits and it's such a short amount of time. So anyways, I'm working on getting all of that material out to everyone so that you can connect in with that. So please register. It's free. And we also are accepting donations. We also have our official OHO t-shirt designs are here. This is the tank top and it's got my X-Ohm on the back. So definitely any support is gratefully appreciated because Sienna and I just do this for everyone and organize all of this. So please register. The registration will get you information, but it also will get you all of the free gifts and offerings from the speakers. You just go to my website, buddhistbiohacker.com, and OHO is in the menu bar, and you just click OHO, register. For those of you who are on my website mailing list, you still want to register because it puts you in a different list. And also for everyone, just a kind of a side note is my own emails are showing up in my junk folders this weekend. So please check your junk and put me back in your main folder if you haven't done that. But yeah, and Julie, do you want to share a little bit about just a snippet of what you're going to talk about at OHO?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really looking for, as I shared earlier, I'm speaking about reclaiming lost energy and looking at where your energy is being kind of split, or you split away from it, excuse me, identifying that and those places, going back into the past and bringing it back to who you are and where you are today, anchoring the energy, and then utilizing it in a way that is uplifting and inspiring and expansive, not just for you, but for the world at large. So excuse me. So it'll be kind of hands-on, intense. I'll be going through these steps and practices that viewers and people involved can utilize after the retreat. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be, like I said, interactive and really powerful stuff. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I'm so happy you're a part of it. And man, an hour just flies by as usual. And Julie and I will be on again. I have no doubt. We're just allowing the energy to birth out of us. And I'll be back later tonight with Scott and Denise to talk about Northern Exposure Season 2 and to kind of recap Season 1. We talked about a couple of days ago, but we had more discussion post the live and now have more we want to talk about. But if you're looking for something fun to watch this summer, I highly recommend Northern Exposure. It's free on Amazon Prime right now, and it is full of lucid dream sequences and shamanic healing. It is like the most awesome TV show. I watched it as a teenager, a young adult, and it was so much a part of my childhood of just the mysticism of that show. So if you're interested in something to escape the world right now and watch something, it's totally worth it. The Alaskan indigenous tribes are deep in the show, and then they also have all of these crazy dream sequences, which we're going to be talking about all summer long. So join me for that. And then Julie, your book, how does everyone get your new book that just launched today?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. Yeah, it's on Amazon. So just search for Julie Hoyle or Shadow and Spark. It's right there. And it really helps people get unstuck and get moving and, start putting new stuff out there in the world. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. And I have a new offering, two new offerings as well, actually. There's a mini course, micro course via my website titled Shadow and Spark. And it includes 3 classes or lessons, and as well as a one-on-one session with me. So it's a really great deal. And then I have a 90-day Writing Your Heart Out program that starts at the end of August, where I will be working with people one-on-one to get you to work through all the challenges and all the blocks, to be able to then identify who you want your readers to be, what your call to service is, how you want to shape your story, and essentially create a first draft. So by the end of the 90 days, you'll have a first draft that you can work with and refine and then publish. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm looking forward to all of it, to OHO, everything. I'm just having a great time.
Oh my gosh, me too. And that course sounds amazing. So for those of you on here that are, wanting to get started, dive into that, because that sounds awesome, Julie. I'm really excited. And yeah, we're just in a fun, creative time. And I know there are a lot of challenges out there in our world and concerns and things going on around the planet, and tough astrology for the summer. And remember that our focus on the planet is to learn, to heal ourselves, to focus inward so we can create outward. So when you're thinking about what to do for the planet or what to do, like, this is what to do. Like, right. Get out there, share your story, share what you're learning. That is the awakening. It's going to do more power for you to focus on your own story and healing yourself than it will to be in a healing circle in so many ways. So get out there and help the planet in that way.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Julie. I love all this time together. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And we will see you in a few hours.
Thank you.